We are into week 3 of the federal election campaign, not even halfway through this thing yet. So let's start with Newspoll, because it tends to explain all the bluff and bluster and all the frustration and exasperation that follows in our political debate. Newspoll is as close as we get to a running tally, a scoreboard during the election campaign. And the short story today is that nothing has changed. The stable two-party preferred outcome of 53% for Labor and 47% for the coalition, if it was repeated on election day, would ensure the government couldn't win. It would have to lose office, but it might leave Labor struggling to get a majority in its own right. This is minority Labor government territory. That might scare a few viewers. But drill a little deeper and there are gentle, tiny little signs that both parties might welcome. The coalition's primary has lifted 1 point. That's a movement in the right direction. It continues a trend, but it's barely a movement. They need to do much, much better than that. On the other hand, for Labor, there's also been an uptick of 1 point in the primary vote. And that's better news for them, really. Why? Because it seems to arrest a slide downwards. They've been heading backwards for a while. So at least that is arrested for now. Again, though, Scott Morrison has increased his lead as preferred Prime Minister. As I've mentioned, this is sometimes seen as a lead indicator, something that moves before the voting intention follows. But nothing much has happened for the coalition on that front yet, and they are running out of time. Less than 4 weeks to go, as I mentioned at the start. They are trending in the right direction, the coalition, but nowhere near strongly enough just at the moment. Still, on the Labor side, riddle me this one. Their leader, Anthony Albanese, has hardly been seen for 5 days, and Labor's slide in the polls looks to have been arrested. He had a shocking start to the campaign, then he went into COVID isolation and largely disappeared. And this has helped. Dear oh dear. Much as they'd like, the Labor strategists can't hide Albanese for the rest of the campaign. In fact, he called out of isolation for an interview with Ray Hadley this morning, reassuring everyone that he wasn't feeling too crook.
I have been tired, and you can probably hear I'm a bit croaky this morning.
That's good to hear, but it underlines the point I made here yesterday, and that is there's no reason he couldn't be doing endless television and radio interviews. We'd be happy for a chat with him any time. The main reason he isn't doing a lot of media seems to be that whenever he talks, Labor's weaknesses are exposed. And that happened repeatedly today when he was grilled by Hadley. For instance, Albanese was asked about border security and the potential arrival of people smuggling boats under Labor.
Well, they won't come to Australia.
Where will they go?
They won't come to Australia.
Where will they go?
Settled, well, Nauru, offshore.
What, they'll go straight from the boat to Nauru, will they? Good luck.
Offshore.
Good
luck.
Have the same, Anthony, we will have
the same policy as the government has.
Well, no, he doesn't have the same policy as the government. That's not true. The government has temporary protection visas as a crucial fallback option in case any asylum seekers get to Australia. Labor says it will scrap them. So that's either another mistake by Albanese or a deliberate deception. Then there's that climate policy shambles I highlighted last night, where one Labor frontbencher, Pat Conroy, says coal mines won't have to buy carbon credits. And his senior frontbencher, Chris Bowen, says they will.
Our policy is right, Ray. And by the way, that policy of safeguards mechanism is the one that was introduced by Tony Abbott. It applies to the same companies, to exactly the same companies, not to one company more.
Yes, the mechanism is the same, but Labor says the coalition haven't used it properly. Either Labor are going to ramp it up and make coal mines and other large industries pay in a way that even Labor's Joel Fitzgibbon has said would effectively be a carbon tax. Either Labor are going to do that or they are not.
Well, we will have no carbon tax.
No, well, let's just make sure there'll be no carbon tax under any government I'll leave, ever.
There will be no carbon tax ever.
Yes, another promise not to impose a carbon tax. You don't need carbon dating to work out how long it's been since one of those was broken. On national security, the Labor leader also went with the line that it's Australia's fault that Solomon Islands has done a grubby security deal with China. And not only is it Australia's fault, according to Albanese, it's linked to our climate change policies.
They say in their statements, when the Pacific, including Australia, have got together, guess what they have to say? They say consistently that climate change is the #1 issue.
Honestly, can you believe the gullibility, the lunacy of taking this sort of climate rhetoric seriously? Albanese is actually arguing that Solomon Islands is doing a security deal with China, the world's greatest emitter of greenhouse gases. It produces 27% of all emissions, and they're continuing to grow dramatically. So Solomons are doing this deal with China as a slapdown to Australia over climate change, when Australia has cut its emissions more than most nations, and we only produce about 1.2% of global emissions and falling. If you believe this stuff, Albo, China has a strategic naval base it would like to sell you. Look, with the polls stabilising while Albo's been out of circulation and interviews like this when he does join the fray, Labor must be disappointed that COVID isolation periods got shortened.